Everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again. My name is Karina Ruiz. I am a principal at Brick Architecture, and we are honored to serve as the district's partner in this long-range planning effort. So you'll see various members of our team here. Welcome everyone back to the important work that we're going to do tonight in our summit. So we have a 3-hour summit. We've promised to put both brain breaks and bio breaks in, so that way we can make it through this 3 hours together. But I encourage you, if ever you need to go grab some water, grab some snacks. We hope this will be a highly engaging session. We encourage you to try and be as present as possible. I know the world is distracting us from all angles, but if you could possibly kind of minimize as many of those distractions as you can. If there's not a lot of noise in your house, by all means, please unmute yourself so that way you can be an active part of the conversation. And we're just really excited to do this work with you today. Marnie, will you share screen, please? Okay. So I'm just kind of going to orient you to what our plan is going to be for the day. Obviously, we're here primarily to focus on establishing and digging deeper into those, reviewing the socio-spatial issues, and then having a conversation and generating those into ideas that will become what we call our facility planning characteristics. So will you go to the next page, please? So we're Sage fairly quickly here, and Lana are going to lead us off in an icebreaker activity, and then we're going to immediately kind of get to know each other a little bit better. We'll focus on revisiting the group agreements, and then really set the stage for the work of the coalition. Talk about kind of what are our grounding documents, what is the role of the long range or the purpose of the long range facilities plan. I don't think we were as clear in kind of setting that in its appropriate context last time. So we want to be sure we're clear about what it is and what it isn't, and then define the purview of our work here together, right? So we've been able to take and present the socio-spatial issues that we presented last time and address some of the comments that we heard to bring those back to you as kind of the final version, if you will, of those that will form the foundation of all of our work moving forward. So that will be basically the backdrop under which we now start to transform to what are the listening and learning lessons that we got relative to how we might solve some of the problems that were identified in some of those issues. And we'll do that together. We will be in a series of breakout rooms, and we'll move around. We'll get you back in Miro and kind of orient people to that. So I think the idea is to get us started in that way. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Sage to allow us to get into our icebreaker.
Yeah, thank you. Our icebreaker this time, we're going to break into small groups and discuss a question to get to know each other a little bit better. Lana is going to go over the question here.
Hey everyone. The question we have for our icebreaker today is, what inspires you to work for equity and social justice? So I'll take a shot at answering this question, and then Sage will take a shot at answering it, and then we'll go into our breakout rooms. So what inspires me to work for equity and social justice is the idea of radical wellness. I think the occupation of a marginalized body in America just carries that implication already of not only trauma, but grief and this kind of isolation and sense of otherness. So when I say like I work for radical wellness, I work for the idea that those in marginalized communities can have this sense of well-being and comfort and support to move past not only these traumas and this legacy of kind of the American history behind our identities, but to move forward to a future in which they can embody the kind of wellness and success and hope that they deserve. But yeah, I'll pass this off to Sage to give it a shot.
Yeah, my answer to the question would just be that I constantly see within my social structures and within my peers the effects of systemic oppression, and just seeing that on its own makes me want to fight it, makes me want to create some change. And I think that with that, I'm gonna pass it back to Marty here, so we can go into our breakout rooms.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that screen. I gave you the question in the chat, which will go with you, and I will also send it with you. I am going to send you into groups of 2. You should go automatically, and you have about 5 minutes. So just kind of watch your time and take 2.5 minutes each to just share and get to know each other. It's as if this is a little face-to-face meeting we get to have, even though we're virtual. If anybody joined after I created these rooms, I'll place you after I send everyone. Is everybody okay? Hold on to your seats. I'm about to send you. Have fun.
Wow.
I love it.
Me too.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. So how did that feel? I'd love to hear from a couple of you. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and tell me what struck you about that.
I'll jump in. Sage is awesome. We talked about the intersection of critical race theory and computer science, which is his kind of major interest, both his major interests right now. And boy, that would be a project.
Oh,
Just because that computer thinking so permeates everything we do. It is an architecture.
It is.
That needs to be kind of deconstructed. So
thank you. And thank you, Scott, for stepping up and creating our space together. You just made it okay for everyone else to join in. I appreciate that. Would anybody else like to?
Personally, I was in a breakout room with Abby, and I thought it was interesting how we had obviously we had the same perspective of wanting everyone to feel comfortable in these spaces, and that's the same reason that we are interested in social justice and racial equity. But the fact that we came from 2 very different perspectives, one is like a student versus a parent/architect. So I thought that was interesting.
Amazing. Isn't that what it's all about? How about one more? We have just about 1 more minute.
I can go. This is Octavio. I was sharing with Amanda, and I just loved her answer, which was, I just give a bleep, which I thought was very similar to kind of what I was thinking. And I was like trying to make it much more long-winded, but at the end of the day, it turns out that I'm an architect. Amanda works in real estate, and we just think that there's just, our fields just touch so much that I think it's important that we all just give a bleep about this work, because it's important work, and it's part of our responsibility as, you know, creators of the built environment. So
thank you so much. I love what you said, which sets me up perfectly for what we're going to do next, in that you are creating the environment. You've all just created this container by sharing and by lending your voice to your thoughts. And so I just shared my screen, and we are going to revisit our group agreements. So over the course of this CRiT coalition, from the very first time we met, we created the beginning of this list. So if you all just take a look at it, so any that speak to you, think creatively, explain acronyms. We're working on that. Listen without judgment. These are all ideas of how we're going to show up together. And they're our group agreements, or our ground rules. So we created this as a team, and we are holding each other and ourselves to this list. And so every time we meet, we will add to it, knowing the things that have come before, knowing how we've been together so far, knowing how you've met with other people in your life and want to show up here. So just let me know if there is anything that you would like to add to this, and I'm going to update it as we go. And I'll add it to our Miro board in a moment. Just give you a minute to look over it. And again, just unmute yourself and let me know if there's something we should add or address.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing for us to consider is that the topics that we're talking about can be hard for folks, can bring trauma and be hurtful for some folks. And so we just want to be sure that we've captured whatever it is that you need to feel as safe and as brave as you can to bring your best self to the topic. So if there's something you need, please let us know.
Typing in front of everyone is very triggering. These topics can be hard and hurtful. We're going to do everything we can to bring our best selves to the discussion.
Yeah. Scott just put in the chat, Marnie, extend grace. We all need it in these times.
Thank you. I will grab that from the chat and pop it in there. Nope. I won't. Okay. I will type it.
Anyone else?
Can we address the semi-private situation that exists between Immersion Magnet and the local school?
Yeah, Jenny, so we'll get into right now kind of setting ourselves in the context of what things are kind of in our purview and what things aren't, right? So bear with us for 1 minute. I promise you we'll start having those conversations. So thank you for that.
Yes, and right now we're kind of looking at how we will show up in this space tonight. So we're going to spend about 3 hours together. So how do you want to be treated, and how do you see yourself treating each other? So we're setting, sort of giving ourselves boundaries and holding each other to it. One that I've been adding kind of lately is hold each other accountable to our group agreements. I'm going to add that. Anything else that you feel like is glaringly missing? What would make you feel safe speaking in this space tonight?
One thing that my team has been doing since we all went home and started working from bedrooms is flexible and forgiving.
Good one.
Yeah, I like that, Andrew.
Is there anything you're missing? If you kind of close your eyes and think of that time where you felt really, really safe in a team and you felt like you could really voice your opinion, how would you describe that? And is it missing from our list? And know that this lives in our Miro board, which we will all be in a moment, and we revisit it each time we meet. So you can kind of be thinking of these as how we're going to treat each other. We are going to recognize and appreciate youth airtime. We're going to make sure that everyone has equal airtime. A way I like to say that is make space, take space, make space, give space. So recognize if maybe you're doing all of the talking in your room, and notice if people aren't. So maybe ask for others' opinions. Be comfortable with discomfort.
Marnie, we have in the chat, take a break when you need to.
Take a break when you need to. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how do you all feel? All right, this will be our list. If anytime you want to revisit, just let me know. And I'm going to click out of that box. So that's our list for April 22nd, Earth Day, 2021.
Thank you, Marnie.
You're
That's good,
welcome.
Marnie.
Thanks. Okay.
Okay, so like I said, it's important for us to kind of set the stage for the work of the CRiT Coalition. So obviously our work is grounded in PPS's educational vision, which is PPS Reimagined. This is one of the documents that's linked on our Miro board. Next, Marnie. This is one of the documents that's linked on our Miro board, and most specifically to the statements that the district has created as part of this vision relative to, what are the most important things for us to consider kind of in the context of the direction that the district is going, right? Our role, as you'll hear, isn't to change the vision or to impact the vision, but rather to work within the context of what is stated in PPS Reimagined. And then further, to also look at, next, the work that Portland Public Schools has already done, the great work they've done in terms of establishing and implementing consistently a racial equity and social justice lens, right? The long-range facility plan is grounded in the work that precedes us, the vision, and specifically the Res-J lens being kind of chief among those. And really, what we think about when we think about the district's Res-J lens is that it's a critical tool that we can use to think about the district's varying systems, right? We've talked about kind of the rings that are within that and how we'll interact with that, but essentially ensuring that we can provide students with as varied, as equitable experience as possible, to alleviate any burdens and provide benefits and outcomes for them, especially foregrounding those in the underserved communities, right? And I think it's clear, or what I want to make clear is that while we are working in the context of this lens, it's not included in our scope to reconstruct or to retool this lens. We're just working with it as it exists. And so you'll see here, and these again are linked in the work plan, but the kind of belief statements that the district has relative to what they want to be able to accomplish from a Res-J lens. Next. Yeah, so I'm going to spend any questions about that before I go into the specifics of what a long-range facilities plan is, what this acronym that we're working with is. Okay. So I think it's important, we keep talking about our lane, even just internally among our team, because a long-range facilities plan, it's important for us to be grounded in the context of what it is and what it isn't. And knowing that there are PPS initiatives, there are various initiatives across Portland Public Schools, both completed, underway, and forthcoming, that are going to impact the long-range plan. But we need to be able to kind of set those in the context of what the purview is of the group of this work, and quite frankly, the purview of our team as we start to think about establishing this long-range facilities plan. So the scope of the long-range plan is really to forecast the district's facilities needs. So we say facilities, and I think it's important, again, for us to really think about what that means. That's anything that has to do with a reallocation or an increase of square footage, so area, physical space area, adjacencies within a building, and quite frankly, within a site. So again, physical adjacencies of what things are next to each other and how they work in partnership with each other in the physical environment. And then improvements or upgrades and how those play themselves out, right? So we want to be able to think about that through a 20-year horizon, and then also align those the facilities needs with the educational vision that was in PPS Reimagined, right? So we want to ensure that as we're thinking about that, we're not only thinking about the pedagogical side of the educational vision, but ensure that we're also advancing racial equity and social justice in education through the built environment as best we can in the scope of what's in facilities. So in terms of thinking about what's outside the scope of the long-range facilities plan, there are things that may impact us, but in terms of our ability to impact them are outside of our scope of work. That's not to say that we don't think they have value. That is not to say that we don't believe that they are important. They're just not in our scope of work. And some of those things you see on the list in front of you, right? There's obviously a group that's doing enrollment balancing, capacity analysis, and school attendance boundaries. We're looking at different policies. There's folks in other groups in the district that are looking at district policies and kind of lottery systems, charter schools. So, the question that was asked earlier about can we address that, that really isn't in our lane in terms of kind of the role of a long-range plan. Policies around neighborhood schools, alternative magnets, kind of again, thinking about the different configurations of school. It isn't the purview of our document to say, we believe that you should start to institute charter schools or not institute charter schools. That just is not in our scope of work. Things like school busing and like the actual busing, the policies, right? If we were talking about we need to create a place for all of the buses to be housed physically, that would fall under our purview. But kind of the policies of how busing works, where it goes, who's on the bus, that stuff's not in our lane. Recommendations relative to staffing at all levels, that's not in our lane. And then maybe as we start to think about kind of some of these other documents, it will help to get what John I think calls the document landscape of the district. So if you'll move to the next one. So you did this much more eloquently than I probably will, John. So jump in here if I'm stating anything incorrectly. But
can I
go ahead.
Sorry, a quick question. Just going back to talking about like what's in our lane or purview and what's not. And so a question that I have that's not totally clear to me is about funding and how facilities, how funding is prioritized for different facilities and budgeting and that sort of thing. And where would that fall?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in the context of what we're talking about, we will lay out as part of a capital improvement plan the costs associated with the facilities needs that we identify, right? And it will be a large dollar figure. And as it relates to a 20-year plan, it then becomes the responsibility of whether it's part of this existing bond, which already has a plan for what's going to be included, or potentially thinking about bonds over the course of the next 20 years. What our document will state is we'll leave breadcrumbs that say these are the things we think you should prioritize because of X, Y, and Z. But in terms of the only way, unfortunately, in Oregon, well, the main way in Oregon that school districts improve their physical facilities, their capital improvement, is through capital improvement bonds, right? So that is, while we make kind of a 20-year forecast of what that is and talk about the pricing of that and make some suggestions about prioritization, we don't say, okay, district, in the next 2 years, you will go and do X, Y, and Z. That is the board's ultimate decision as it relates to kind of funding them specifically with a capital improvement bond. Does that make sense, Karen?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any follow-up? Okay. I see a note in the chat and around the CRiT Coalition. This is actually a good opportunity to remind folks, and Marnie, when we get into Miro, we'll take you there. We have a glossary of terms, but I'm going to allow Amada actually to explain where the CRiT Coalition terminology came from, because it does have a root in critical race theory, but it's not exactly the same.
Thank you, Karina, and great question. Thanks for asking. So CRiT is a sort of academic gesture that reflects the practice of critical race theory or the application of critical race theory. So when you see CRiT, when it says CRT, that's what stands for critical race theory. When you see CRiT, it's sort of attached to the practice. So we decided to call this coalition the CRiT Coalition because we really saw this as a way of practicing critical race theory, both as a strategy for community engagement, but also as a strategy to really align the long-range facilities plan to the district's commitment to racial equity. So when you see CRiT, it really is signaling the practice of the theory, critical race theory. And it's often attached to particular branches of critical race theory, like tribal CRiT, which looks specifically at the experiences of Native American and Indigenous communities as it relates to foregrounding race. So it's often attached to another sort of topic or research interest, and it just helps to show this is in service to or in practice of critical race theory.
Thank you, Dr. Pettis, for that, that answer. So any other questions? Okay. So to get back kind of grounded on the document, so the long range facilities plan is but one document that is in kind of the sphere of the facilities team. So Carrie, as we were talking about a capital improvement plan, that is where the funding gets very tied specifically to a project. So that's another program. So things like an energy and sustainability plan, what we call district standards or design guidelines, those are all individual efforts that work in concert with the long range plan and supplement it, but have much more specific targets in what they're trying to do than what a long range plan is. And so I think it's important to know that all of these are being updated simultaneously. There are various committees and various staff in the district that are working on them. And I think for what I'm going to say, maybe not the first time, but certainly there is a great effort underway to tie those all together. So that way they're not working siloed, but rather are working in service to each other and in coordination with each other. Next. And then I think it's just important to kind of set the context of how we got here for those of you that are kind of joining us, that if you recall, part of the way we practice critical race theory is that we grounded this work in a series of dialogue sessions, what we call listening and learning sessions, that where we focused primarily on ensuring that we were foregrounding the voices of students, of our BIPOC community, and that they really were, they were done in affinity group settings, but it was really intended to take that work and then use that as the foundation of our conversations moving forward. And so as we introduced the sociospatial issues to you last week, those all came directly out of those listening and learning sessions. And so the most important aspect of that is you will see as we move our work forward that we have tried to remain as true as possible to the words that we heard come out of those. And then that's what we're presenting you as a starting point. And then it's now your job as a CRiT coalition to help us add to those words, to help us shape them, better understand them. And then we can use that to kind of move the work forward. Does that make sense? Amanda, do you want to use this opportunity to kind of talk about the changes that were made to the sociospatial issues from last time?
Yeah, thank you. So since the last time we met, we went back and based on your feedback, worked to make the language of the sociospatial issues a little more accessible in order to prepare for our work for today, to begin the sort of problem solving around these issues. So I'm going to really briefly go through these changes, but also know that these slides are actually available in the Miro board and right at your fingertips when we get into the small group work. So no need to get too preoccupied with them here because they'll be available to you moving forward. But you can see, we can start, Marnie, thank you. You can see that we have left the kind of original form that we had and then changes that came directly from our work last time, where people asked for different language to be clarified or just some words to be switched out. So this was the first one, tribute to white dominant narrative, and the changes we made based on your recommendations. The next one. some clarification on what BIPOC meant. Next. Change some language here to be more concrete and specific and tangible about what this particular issue was inviting us to acknowledge. One change there. So in working at this school community divide, what we did was offer limited family and community access to sort of get at that theme. No changes were asked here. We changed rigid to inflexible and hoping that would be a little bit more accessible and easier to problem solve around. Moving towards conventional classrooms, we talked last time about individualistic was really meant to get at sort of anti-cooperative and anti-collaborative. And so we thought maybe conventional would be a little bit more accessible to get at that theme. We heard very strongly from you all that these two issues should be delinked and separated. And so we created binary space, and you'll see what was marked out here, move to number 11, which we'll show you in a minute. Offered a little more clarification on this idea of hidden student space. And then finally here, this is where we couple the unequal and inaccessible space, and specifically looking at the school buildings and sites serving low-income families and communities of color are often in poor conditions with limited resources, and how that relates to the issue of inaccessible space. Facilities, amenities, particularly playgrounds, which we heard a lot in our dialogue sessions, vary widely across the district. Also with underserved families more likely to encounter inaccessible or aging equipment where upgrades are largely dependent on PTA fundraising. We hope this will make for our time today a little bit easier as we get into problem solving mode.
Okay, thank you, Amara. So now we're gonna actually begin to do the work of applying socio-spatial ideas or facility planning ideas to those planning goals. So we, as Amana just laid out, we have 11 of these issues. And now what we're gonna work together in small groups to do in Miro is coming up with solutions to the issues that were just presented, right? So all of these issues obviously came from those conversations that we had, right? These are the words, the voices of countless people spending many hours kind of talking together about what some of the issues were in the district. And so we will all go into a series of breakout rooms. We'll be kind of in a team together. There'll be, I don't know, maybe, somewhere between 6 to 8 of us. Yeah, 6 to 8 of us in a group, and we will stay together. So we'll go into Miro. There will be one that we will do together just to kind of model that, talk about kind of what sorts of issues we're looking for. You will note that there are some items, if you go to the next one, Marnie, that have been pre-populated, right? So if you start to see under each of the issues, there are already ideas that were taken directly from the listening and learning sessions, and those are already there as your starting point. We've translated those into what we call planning language to ensure that they're staying in the lane of a long-range plan. But we recognize that doing that translation for folks that don't do this work every day is really hard, right? And so our job as facilitators who will be in each of the groups is to try and bring that language back into that planning language. But we also don't want that to stifle the thinking, right? So unless we're really outside of the lane of the purview, I'm not going to worry so much about, well, that's not in planning language, because we can translate it into that later, right? This is really just a brainstorming session where we can kind of dream together about how we solve these issues in the district. So with that, I think, Marnie, you're going to move us into, and we'll do this, I guess I should say, in 2 different rounds with a debrief and a break in between. So we're going to do one together. There are 11 issues. So we'll do one together. Then we have 5 that are in round 1, and we will move around. The facilitator will move you around so that each group touches all 5 issues. And then we'll come back, we'll debrief it. We'll do it again with the second set of 5 issues. Does that make sense? All right, Marnie, I'll let you take the logistics from here.
Perfectly clear. I'm actually going to share my screen, and it's going to look a little crazy for a moment because I'm sharing my screen. I'll share my Zoom, and I'm going to share my Miro just to kind of show you how we are going to set up. So most of you have been through this process with us, but quickly, Miro is an online virtual whiteboard, and it's a collaboration space. So we are going to go in there just as if we were in the room with flip charts. We're going to go in there and move stickies around. So I'm going to share my screen. Hold on, it's going to be very strange because I believe you will be seeing Zoom and Zoom. So this is my Zoom screen, and this is my Miro screen. So I have them sitting right next to each other. So I can see you all, and I can see what's happening in Miro. So if you can, when I give you the link in just a moment, this is how you can set up your screen. If you're on a smaller screen like a laptop, you might want to, make Zoom kind of small while we're in Miro if you want to, like this, or if you'd rather see faces. If you don't make it into Miro and it's you don't feel like the hassle, don't worry about it. You're going to be in a breakout room with other folks who will, and they can either help you through it or capture your ideas. Okay, so I'm going to move this in case that was too many doubled faces. And this is what our Miro board looks like. So we started up here. We worked together on February 25th, and we've captured that. We moved to April 1st and worked together and captured that. And today we will be down here in April 22nd. Earth Day, happy Earth Day. And then on this side of our board is all of our information. So we have a little control center over here for you to orient yourself to Miro if you haven't. I'm sure you all read the thing that John put in the invite. I'm sure you've read it and practiced, but this will tell you a little bit of it, how to move around. I'll show you when we get in there as well. Here's our schedule of meetings. And if you just sort of follow the arrows down, we have all kinds of resources in here. This is our roadmap, and this is that glossary. So this is kind of a living document that we keep adding to as we move through. These are just a visual to remind ourselves that this is what we're working on. We don't get to affect all the things. We can't boil the ocean. This is the repository that our interns have created, and that if you click on those, you can download them. There's all kinds of amazing information in there. And then these are all the presentations we've had so far, including the one tonight. So we save everything we do. We have an artifact from all of our time together, and it is a constantly evolving board. Together, we are going to move through this exercise. So we will do one together, and then we will move through issue 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm going to give you the link in just a moment, and we'll all jump in there together. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. And you're going to just click on that link, and it's going to open a tab in your browser. I'm looking at you over here on my other screen where my camera is not. There we go. So if you click on that, it will open your browser. If your browser is Explorer, go ahead and just close that on out, open up any other browser, and copy clip this address into the address bar of your browser. I can see there's already, well done, 22, 23, 24 folks in here. We have 29, and we are going to just do this very quickly so that we can get into our work. And you should have come in down here into our first breakout session, which is our April 22nd. And I'm going to just sort of walk you through navigation really quick, just because I know we have a few new folks. So if you are using a mouse, you're going to click and drag yourself around. So I like to think I'm on a skateboard, which I don't do, but if I had one foot on a skateboard, I would put the other on the ground and drag myself. So I'm just going to click and drag. And that's how you navigate around. If you are on a laptop, you're going to use 2 fingers on your touchpad. That's how you move around. If you want to zoom in and out, Miro is an infinite space. So you could theoretically zoom out forever. And that is what's so great about it. We can move really close in and see really detailed information, and then we can zoom out and see our entire time we've had together. So in order to zoom in and out, you're going to use your scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out, or you're just going to pinch and pull on your touchpad, just like you do on your phone. If you're on a tablet or a phone, pinch and pull. Pinch and pull. If for some reason, when you move that scroll wheel, it moves up and down on your screen, not in and out, just right click anywhere on the canvas, as the white space is called the canvas, and there's a little navigation mode. And you can click on that and make sure that the navigation mode is consistent with what you are using. So we have 24, 25, 26 people in here. There's just a couple of you who are not. Is anyone having trouble? Andrew and Carrie, are you having trouble getting it? Just go ahead and unmute yourself. Are you having trouble getting into the Miro board?
No, for me, I have a separate laptop that I was going to use.
Oh, fantastic.
But I'm having trouble opening up the link on or getting access on the other computer. I should be able to just like copy or to type that.
Yes.
And it should open.
That would be the best idea. I was thinking you could copy it into an email and email it to yourself, or just type it.
I did that and it didn't work, but anyway, I can just use my computer, the same computer too.
Or if you can log into Zoom on your other one, you can have Zoom on the other computer. That's a great option is to have two. How about you, Andrew? Are you in the Miro board?
I'm in Miro, but it doesn't look like I'm in our Miro. It looks like I'm just in generic, like splash page Miro.
Is it asking you to sign up?
Yeah, it's asking me to create my avatar and all that, which I've done before.
Oh, I see you. You're up here. I'm going to pull you down to where we're going to start.
Okay.
Second, and it actually looks like you're in here twice.
Yeah, I'm in with Explorer, which I'm just about to close.
Okay, great.
And now I'm just in Chrome. There I am.
You were just at the top of the board, so I just
thank you.
You're welcome. Gonna miss that when we go back to the room, you know. Okay, how about
before we go into the large group, will you point everyone to where the glossary is? Will you bring everyone to the glossary so that way?
I will. I am going to pull you all to me, and this is where the glossary is.
So if you remember on our board, we have a resources section. In that section is our glossary of terms. So a lot of the conversations that we had last time were help us navigate where or how some of these terms that were used in the issues, what they mean, make it more accessible. So partly we did that by creating a glossary of terms, and so wanted to orient you all to that.
And we keep adding to that. And now if you haven't clicked, you will continue to follow me. And I'm going to pull you down to this large group where I did not put any sticky notes, and I'm going to right now. Each of these rooms will, each little, what do we call it, Scloval, did we decide? Can't remember.
A rounded off rectangle, I think it had a name.
It's like a stadium or a something. Anyway, each one is numbered. We are going to go from 1 all together in the large group. And then if you move to the right, I'm actually going to drag you all day, and you will all start in the room that is the number of your breakout room. So when you go into the breakout room, you're going to look up to the left and it will say breakout room number 2. So you're just going to navigate yourself to that little blue 2. And then the timer will set the timer for 5 minutes. And when the timer goes off, your entire group is going to navigate yourselves on the Miro board in the same breakout room to number 3. And then you'll have 5 minutes on each issue. And then after we do 2 through 6, we'll all come back together and have a little debrief and talk about how that went. And then we'll move to the next. So the idea is if we were in the room, we would break you into tables and you would sit together and really kind of discuss this. This is going to be a quick discussion, just 5 minutes. So we're really interested in kind of your reaction. So I've added the slide that Amada just went through, and you can look at it and kind of, how do you react to this? What is a solution? What does your gut say? How do we solve this? And we're going to just as many as we can This is a quantity idea. And then we will take these back and we'll go through them and compile them. Okay, so we have 20, I think everyone's in there. This is amazing. You all are amazing. So I'm going to pull you all down to issue number 1. And I believe Karina is I'm going to pull you all to me.
Yeah.
And we're going to walk through this first one and model it. And then this is what we will do together in breakout rooms.
Right. So the issue that we are looking at specifically here are tributes to white dominant narratives, right? So if Marnie, as the facilitator in each room, will be able to zoom you in and out of kind of what the issues are. So you can see there are already two sticky notes there. If you'll zoom in a little bit more on those, Marnie, so that my eyes will work. So 2 that came out of conversations that we had in listening learning were plan for the removal of all culturally insensitive and racist artwork in PPS facilities. The second one was continue to review school names and mascots to assure alignment with the district's racial equity and social justice goals, right? So those came directly from feedback we heard in listening and learning. And so we brought those forward for you all to hear today. So you are welcome to participate in this in at least 3 ways. One is we can just have a conversation and one of us will take down your notes. The other is you can take and drag a sticky note to where you need to work and then double click in that sticky note and start typing. And the other is if for whatever reason, it sounds like almost everyone is in Miro, just go ahead and send a chat to one of us, whoever your facilitator is. You shouldn't need to enter in anything new, but if you would like to, you can do that as well. But you can go ahead and chat us and we can go ahead and translate yours into chat. So what are some ideas people have about how we start to break down the tributes to white dominant narratives? Does anyone want to share out loud?
I actually had been thinking about this as soon as I opened it up. And not only, taking down items, figures, things, art that is, kind of obtrusive, offensive, has mixed history, but also making sure that we include new art that is from like a mixed background that is applicable to all students in some way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, without erasing any sort of history behind it.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share one aloud?
I have one, Karina.
Yeah.
And I heard this recently from another engagement, and it was to make explicit the implicit, right? To really daylight why things have been done the way they are as part of telling the story of it or the history of the space, so that there's nothing left to ambiguity. There's like a real clarity as to why things are being done.
Thank you, Octavia. Anyone else? Other ideas? You can see some folks are writing in there. You should be able to kind of now pan yourself around with that center zoom, that center scroll button, holding it down.
And if you want to just click on a sticky note and drag it over into the space and double click on it, you can type in it. There you go.
And you'll see us start moving things to group things. That's okay as well.
It's a giant one.
Anyone else have any other ideas that you want to share?
So Jenny, you can just go ahead and grab those little white dots in the corner of that and scale that sticky note down so that it's not covering everyone else's. That'd be great.
I don't know how many architects would design a neoclassical building in 2021 or 2031, but maybe moving away from neoclassical architecture.
going to say continue to have students drive the name and mascots evaluation and renaming process.
I'm also thinking about concepts around school values and culture and how those are promoted dominantly in signage, posters, art. So most likely I would assume values and, cultures of the school, whatever the school values itself would hopefully not be a tribute to, a white dominant narrative, or if it needs to be shifted, but then to really promote that in very public and physical ways.
Great.
I'm wondering if we want our schools to be hubs for the community, how could we have a representation maybe from the artwork? I apologize, I forgot your name. I was just saying that, Valerie or Valeria. Did I say your name correctly?
Yeah, Valeria.
Valeria, sorry. How do we capture that and like over time? So thinking about gentrification too, like how do we capture what's going on and how a community is represented over time? Especially, I think in one of the meetings I was in a building, we're supposed to think of a building being there for what, 70 years, 50 years, a long time. So how do we capture the essence of the community for small chunks of time over time? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Any other ideas?
It's less explicitly about race, but maybe moving away from English dominant narratives. McDaniel has 90 languages in it. Maybe from an architectural perspective, thinking about how to either be extremely multilingual beyond just the top 5, or maybe try and just move away from verbal signage towards more like visual signage.
That's great.
I already put this on here, but if you would want to like make any edits to it, I put celebrating and honoring the history of the land that the building is built on through tributes. I think that would be very important for each and every one.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone else as we sort of wind down this one? So what will happen in our when we're doing this is our breakout groups is one group will leave their legacy, so to speak, on the slide. The next group will come in, add to it, refine it, and we'll do that kind of 5 times in the round, right? And then we'll come back and we will debrief as a whole. Anything else for this one? Tributes to white dominant narratives that we want to capture? Okay, Marnie, what do you think?
I think it's perfect timing. So once again, I'm going to send you to breakout rooms. Some of you have logged off and potentially logged back in since I made these breakout rooms, and I'm not going to make them again right now. So if I'm going to send everyone, and there will be a couple of you left, and I will place you. What's going to happen is you will be sent to a breakout room just like you were earlier. I was going to say this morning, just like you were earlier. And if you look up into the left-hand corner of that Zoom window, it will tell you what room you're in. So I have room 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If your room is 2, for instance, you're just going to navigate yourself to that little blue 2. I can't drag you when you are all separated into breakout rooms, so you'll just navigate yourself over. And then I'm going to set a timer in Miro that will show up at the bottom of your screen, and every 5 minutes that will go off, and then you'll just navigate to the next one. We'll go in order of the numbers.
And there'll be a facilitator with you in each room that will kind of walk you through that.
Yes. And if Miro becomes an issue, pretend you're not in it. focus in your breakout room and just discuss with your team, and they will capture for you. Is that clear? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and send you, hold on to your chairs. I'm going to open all room. Actually, I'm going to pull everyone first to right here so you can see all of the rooms, and you will navigate yourself. Just zoom into the room that is your breakout room. Okay, I'm going to open the rooms.
Whirlwind of sociospatial issues.
Woo!
So many stickies.
There's some good
So
stuff.
great.
So maybe what we can do is just gather people's thoughts, right? So if we think about maybe, Marnie, will you share your screen so we can maybe go by issue, maybe start with issue number 2.
I'm sharing only, Miro. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, any feedback here for folks? Anything that felt, particularly impactful to you in your group as you talked about it? Give everybody a chance to kind of catch up and do a bit of a gallery read.
I'd be remiss if I didn't second the provide spaces for community orgs.
Indeed.
I joined late because I came from another meeting, but I love the conversation. I think it's really important. It's interesting that we're challenging kind of the ways that we can make improvements. And I couldn't really get Miro to work. Maybe it's Miro. But I shared that we had a prayer room in at the city of Portland where I work, a flexible space room that could be used for nursing, for if you have to cry at work, it happens sometimes, or if you need to pray, and so anyway, the idea of flexible space, which we do have flexible space in our buildings, but I don't know that they're dedicated flexible space and if they're private. So
yeah.
And comfortable.
And comfortable, yeah. I mean, there's always the bathroom, right? But this would be that other place. And actually, we did have a masseuse that used that room every other week as well. So we could schedule the half an hour, neck rubs or whatever. But the idea was flexible space that could be used for prayers in particular.
Mm-hmm. And also, like you said, to just kind of deal with process emotion, right? Kind of carry yourself through them. Yeah.
I love that you're kind of extending that to be more flexible. In our group, there was a concern expressed about, could a room dedicated just to prayer be in a public space? Could that be controversial or difficult? But to name it as, prayer and, the broader kind of whatever prayer is to you or helping you process your emotions, even the fact that it's a nursing mother's room, that it's private, all of those things, I think that then takes away some of that potential concern of the safety of the space or whatever it might be.
Yeah, like who are we to judge? I mean, sometimes you just need a room.
Mm-hmm.
You got a new baby, you lost your cat and
for sure
something came up on your computer, whatever it is, or you need to pray several times a day.
I mean, we could just make it universal and just say grounding space, for example.
Yes.
Well, a number of our schools and all our newer schools are building in those kind of safe spaces for students.
Wellness rooms, yeah.
And they're designed to be comforting. So kind of expanding on that concept. And again, let's not to let the label mess with what we want to
cause. Yeah. What about other ideas? There's a lot of sort of focus on, ways that you start to kind of curate the representation of BIPOC folks, right? So student-led imagery, art that is curated, visiting artists generate student art. What else? Anything else striking anybody here before we move on to the next one?
This idea of the nonlinear seats and rows and desks, and also positionality to power, I think is an interesting concept when we're trying to be, serve multicultural audiences, and how being in a circle, for instance, might be more comfortable. Maybe not, the teacher at the front and the people in a straight lines and in rows, just challenging the notion that that's the best way to educate kids.
Yeah, Michelle,
particularly kids of color.
One of the most impactful comments we heard during the listening and learning session was from a Black student, middle school student, who said, I grew up my entire life thinking that the right person in the room was the white lady, because she was always the teacher and everyone was oriented towards her. And every answer was always coming from her. And it was all about spatial arrangement and hierarchy. It was,
yes,
that one stuck with me for a long time. Yeah.
Yes, having a circle or another arrangement besides that linear levels the playing field in terms of the power and the positionality to power, and calls on the person that's sitting in the back of the room unengaged to at least, if they're not talking, to be engaged in the circle.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else on this one before we move on to number 3? All right, thank you, Marnie. So this is similar, right? Talking about the underrepresentation of BIPOC communities in your schools. So a lot of ideas around creating space, making space for both physical, not monuments, physical, whether they be flags or art or, ways in which you can bring culture and some of that into buildings. But then also there was a lot of conversations in our group around space to do things that have cultural implications and being sort of intentional about including that into spaces. Andrew, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I work at IRCO, Immigrant Refugee Community Organization, and one of the most successful things I've been a part of is the Lunar New Year celebration that we've done at Jason Lee the last several years. And though it doesn't change the walls, it doesn't have a permanent impact on the facilities, by us having a space that is large enough to host hundreds of community members. 2019, we had 800 community members in an elementary school. It has really changed the feel of the school. Our Vietnamese staff and their Vietnamese clients all report that they feel that the school climate has shifted in large part because the school has hosted this community event. And I think that these kinds of community events can play a very powerful role in being kind of like, I saw lots of people commenting about having changing mural spaces, but that a performance in a way is sort of a changeable mural space, but rather than a visual work of art, it's a performance art. But I think having spaces for cultural celebrations can really have a positive impact on the feel of the school.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah, I went to the Vietnamese immersion programs celebration at Roseway Heights. Well, I guess it was 2 years ago now. And that was great to see because the whole community took part in it, including, a number of parents and students and white parents, as well as Vietnamese parents, and the principal in the middle of it as well. And that was just, I think, a real unifying event for the community. And the food was great.
Yeah,
food was great too.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is in the conversations that we had, right? That those activities can happen because there is a space to host them, or you have to create a space to host them, a space that has food, kind of thinking about all of those things that allow us to do those things that then ground us together around our cultures. Marnie, will you carry us to number 4, please?
I want to just mention quickly the plaza idea, you know, having gone to school in Guadalajara, there's always a space in Guadalajara. The plaza, the public square, is a really great concept.
Yeah. Oh man, a lot of purple here. So this is around welcoming school entrances. So the idea of, I think one that got a number of stars was just kind of revisit the infrastructure and the protocols to create a balance between security and creating a welcoming experience. And then, you know, lots of conversations about kind of what works and what doesn't work relative to that. Any other ideas, any other thoughts people have relative to this?
Yeah, that's just a huge area for discussion, because we're building schools now where you have that security entrance that's kind of, you know, glassed off, where doors can be electronically locked, you know, 5 minutes after the opening bells, so that you have to come in through the front door. I mean, there's just a lot of issues, and it's I don't know of an easy response to it, but the way it's being, the way we're building now is certainly kind of on one end of that security spectrum.
Yeah, and you know, again, as we're thinking about this long-range facilities plan, Scott, part of our job is to create what we call pause points that then you can give to design teams moving forward, that we're not going to have all of the answers, right? But what we can do is call out that what we're hearing directly from community, and quite frankly, from the most marginalized parts of our community, are X, Y, and Z are a problem. Here are some potential solutions. We're not going to dictate to you in a long-range plan how you as an architecture firm or you as a design committee is going to design your project. But what we hope we are able to do is say, we are recognizing that this is a place for you to pause and have a conversation within your design community about how you do that, right?
On the first day that Grant was open for the public to go through, I got so many questions on, wow, it's so great, the natural light coming in and all that glass, is it bulletproof?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's that balance. We'll get there.
That was my first thought walking through McDaniel on Friday. Look at all this glass. Is it bulletproof?
A quick question I had, I just realized, I don't know if this was represented here or if it even fits, but with entries, I'm thinking of at least a couple of schools that their old original entry of the school actually has a former name of the school in it. I'm thinking of Roseway Heights specifically. It still has whatever the old school name was over the main front entry, which isn't actually the entry that most kids enter through, but it kind of makes me a little crazy. Why can't they change out? I know it's architecturally in the building, but could we actually ensure that the building itself physically is updated to reflect current names?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, that balance between sort of paying homage and having historical references, and then ensuring that you are still reflecting your current community and not confusing them by saying, I thought I was at the school, but now I don't know, right? It's that balance, yeah.
And then on a note about history, you know, all of our history is white dominant, you know.
Sure.
I mean, we you know, history is always told by it's told from a certain perspective that's not inclusive. And so I find it really interesting, this idea of like bringing in history from everybody has like the same situation, the same battle. There's always two sides, and we never report it from the side of the
non-dominant side. Yeah.
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 So
I mean, one of the things, go ahead.
Yeah. If we could be intentional about, there's always two sides, multiple sides to history. And I think it'd be really helpful to hear multiple sides, not just the winners, the colonizers,
For sure. Yeah, a lot of what the district is bound to are through agreements that you have, for example, architecturally with the State Historic Preservation Office, right? And so there's a perfect opportunity now to say, how can we bring in different histories, whether they're oral histories that then you can start to capture in the building to ensure that you are not just telling one story and the dominant story, but rather all of the stories and all of the different perspectives. I totally agree with you, Michelle.
I'm noticing that we're having a lot of adults speak up during this time, and I'm just reminding us that one of the things we've kind of claimed is wanting to hear a diversity of voices and student voices. So wondering if we could work together to create space for those other voices that we're maybe not hearing as much in this large group discussion time.
Thank you for that reminder. Sage, Lana, any other students want to chime in here?
Personally,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Melody.
Oh, well, personally, when I was reading through this, I saw a few things on the amount of entrances and their location. And there was this one thing talking about slow entries, and I wasn't really sure what that meant. But that also brought to mind that I was wondering if that was referring to like foot traffic, making sure that there's not too much traffic through one entrance, even though you are trying to keep it safe. Because that can be a bit, I feel for many students, that can be a bit of a nervous space going through the same entrances with so many people there.
Yeah. Does anyone want to add some context as to what you meant by slow entries? I think Valeria had some questions around that. I like the way you described it, Valeria, so that's the way I'm going to think about it. Sage?
Yeah, I think that I was going to mention the other side of that, because in a sense, it definitely is a lot for all the students to cram through one single entrance. But in my experience, I have noticed more often that there are too many entrances, and it's not marked which ones are locked and which ones are unlocked and which ones are closest to the classes or which one goes to some random back room. So it's definitely for me that there are so many entrances and not many that are marked as the entrance.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to speak to reemphasize that I really like the fewer locked doors one. I go to a school where the entrances that are locked during the days are like monitored by SROs and teachers. And if you get caught like using them, you'll like face punishment and things like that. So I think the fewer locked doors just helps in terms of not only accessibility for students, but accessibility for parents. Because I know when things like events happen, I know parents are always coming up to me and asking me like, where do I get into school? Like, how do I get to the auditorium? I think it's just very unwelcoming as a student and even as like a parent trying to enter a school space to just have like the all entrances, which entrances are meant to be used, of course, but only a couple of them be accessible and be accessible at odd times, and it's just not very consistent.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I want to make sure you can see that Elisa is capturing everything you say and is being added. So we are hearing you all.
Okay, we've got probably a couple more minutes, maybe look at 5 and 6 here for a couple of minutes each. Anything relative to creating better family and community spaces?
Well, I wanted to say something. I'm not sure really if it's relevant for for a long range facilities plan, but I think something that came up in our group for several of these rooms and I think is an issue is, and you kind of brought this up with like the historical society and stuff, is the difficulty that school parents and school communities have, like the amount of red tape that exists at PPS to make any sort of changes to a school, and that it really like doing like you can raise the money and everything, but getting PPS to agree to any changes can be is just so onerous for parents and for principals and school communities. And I think it's something to at least be noted, that without having more clear communication around how to make changes like to the buildings, it's not possible for the communities.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Carrie. Anyone else on this one before we move to the last one before our break? Elisa, there's also there are comments coming in the chat as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Was somebody else wanted to speak to that one?
I was just going to ask for just some examples, Carrie, that you know about.
Yeah, so a recent example, and this isn't necessarily maybe with the school building, but with community access. And this is during COVID, so it's complicated, but like I work with community organization, the Impact Northwest, which does Sun Schools for our school, and we do food pantry during COVID for communities. And we've had to do all of our food pantry services like on the sidewalk outside the school, because we can't get, PPS won't let us stand on campus to give food boxes out to families who come for food because we can't have access to the property because of COVID. And so there are things like that where there are rules like that. Or for example, my kid's school is a historic building, and so there are only certain, the front of the school, we can't paint. We've been told we can't change the color. It's this terrible drab gray color. And we've been told that can't be changed because it's a historic building and it's just, I don't know, not allowed in the rules. And so those are two examples, I guess, for me as a parent encountering roadblocks with PPS facilities, wanting to make changes to our school and being told that we can't do it, or that the process is just so complicated that it's inaccessible to most parents to go through to get it to happen.
Okay, let's move to the last one, monolingual space. Anything in this one that people want to highlight? Any other ideas since you've left this group?
I was actually just thinking, in between the space where we're at now and the last one, it kind of falls into both, where daycare spaces should be available for, in all elementary schools, but also that we should make sure that those spaces aren't monolingual as well, making sure that that's basically it, that making sure that those daycare spaces and those additional spaces that we're adding on also fall into like a multilingual inclusive area.
Okay. All right, so we have reached a 5-minute break period. So where are we? We are at 5:57. I'm going to encourage you to turn off your camera, mute yourself, and meet back here in 5 minutes. So we'll see you back here at 2 minutes after 6 o'clock.
Describes how you're feeling right this moment. Just go ahead and put it in the chat and hit enter right now, just to get us all back in the room. Groggy. Celebratory, great, and heavy, hungry. We planned this right through dinner, didn't we? I love that you're eating. Thank you for taking care of yourself. Tired and hopeful. And satisfied, Sage, great. Stiff, happy, vaccinated, John. Fantastic. Okay, so welcome. We're just going to do that again. So basically, exactly the same thing. We're going to go rooms or 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. In fact, I'm going to name your breakout rooms that really quickly as we are sitting here. So we will go into breakout rooms again. And you will do exactly the same as before. I'm going to talk to you and change breakout rooms. This is going to be amazing. Watch me. Rename 3 to 9.
I got it, Marty. You go ahead and change your breakout room. So we'll be doing the exact same exercise. You'll stay in your same groups, and we will just tackle the remaining 5 sociospatial issues that we identified. So
they are ready.
All right.
We've lost a few folks, so rooms are a little different size. Yes, so remember 5 minutes each room. Watch for the timer down there. You're entering kind of your gut reactions to these ideas. Don't worry about wordsmithing. All right, we all ready? And don't worry about Miro. If Miro is even the slightest bit of a problem, just forget it's happening and talk to the people in your breakout. Okay, opening rooms.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. So Marnie, do we have everyone back from?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Will you take? I think we're gonna try and think about the debrief here. You know, obviously Yen's group. We want to be able to provide time for folks to think about what they were struck by. But if you will share your screen, Marnie, please. Yeah, why don't we start at 7? All right, so this talks about sterile and inflexible spaces. What struck you in thinking about kind of the exercise itself? Anything that you heard?
I just want to say, going forward, I want to float an idea.
Yeah, go ahead.
That it may be more creative to state these in a positive. You know, sterile and flexible. Flip that to be a positive statement for what we want to see.
For sure. So the way that we've got them categorized now, they are the issues. When we create the facility planning characteristics, they will be aspirational. So that's exactly what we're doing now, is taking these and turning them from kind of problem identification to more solution lens. Scott, exactly that. Mm-hmm. Oh, Sage, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think that for me, a big experience of feeling like I'm in an inflexible space is when it comes to the heating and cooling of a building, just because it's not the appropriate temperature most of the time. And even trying to accommodate that by opening a window or something does not always work, because if the heater's on when it's not supposed to be on and the window's open, it doesn't properly counteract each other. And personally, if I'm next to an open window and the heater's blowing on me, I get really, really nauseous. So that's not very flexible in my experience. So
not the kind of flexibility you're looking for, for sure. Okay. Let me move us around. Marnie, is there anyone else? Just what about the in general, thinking about these issues in a in kind of as we start to get to some of ideating these solutions? Anything that struck you about the exercise, about the interconnectedness maybe of some of the solutions we're talking about? And now, sorry, before you answer that, I would encourage anyone in Yen's group to be able to go back into any of the areas to add any further thoughts. So maybe, Marnie, we just zoom out and we don't focus on any particular issue, but just in general, I'm anxious to get people's ideas, people's thoughts.
Yeah, Karina, this is
Abby, and I'll say I was really struck by how often we were sort of going from one to the next, but we didn't have to change the conversation because we were sort of just one solution that we were talking about was just slightly different as it came into the next topic. So it was kind of neat.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, they're all connected, right? Like, if we start to solve one problem, it could help us solve another. Anyone else? Valeria or Lana? Any thoughts?
Actually, on a similar note, something that I noted in each of these is that there's a need for more accessibility for those who are in a wheelchair or who are possibly like overweight and may have trouble with the furniture, because that's a big problem too. And having those be inclusive to larger sizes, to wheelchair accessibility, and making sure we do that with the doorways and the furniture in the cafeteria spaces is also one that I saw a lot. And I think those two can be connected in that even at Grant, sorry if I'm like specifying, but coming from a different school, it can feel very isolating having those large open spaces and then like these teeny tiny spaces can feel very isolating.
Thank you, Lydia. Anyone else? General impressions, takeaways, ideas?
I think it got me excited thinking about the potential. Now, granted, we have no idea what will actually come, right? But these ideas, it's kind of like you put it all together and it creates this incredible ideal school building, which I just couldn't help but kind of visualize as we moved from section to section and talked about the different characteristics. Yeah, it was just cool. It was inspiring.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just agree with Kim. I totally agree, Kim. I think this is really hopeful, and I just want to give a shout out to all of you, board members and facilitators, for just doing this process. It's really gives me a lot of hope.
Thank you, Andrew. All right. Anybody else? Any further thoughts before we bring this to a close? What struck you the most? Why don't we go there? Of all that you've heard tonight, what struck you the most?
Although that there was going to be no significant change to the way the district approached these groups that they want to be perceived to care about. Because if you can't actually reach out to different communities and types of people, and you have a district that was designed for white supremacy, it's going to be a white supremacist district going forward. So that struck me that that's not even on the table, because that means it's not really a public school district. So just my thoughts.
Yeah, I will reiterate for folks that in the listening and learning session, the majority of the feedback that we got, that we brought forward here, were directly from BIPOC families, from students, from BIPOC students. So it was intentional effort to foreground the voices of those most marginalized in this effort moving forward, or that's how we got to where we are. And that's been the central focus of our work, to ensure that that is the experience. Those are the lived experiences that we're bringing forth. Anyone else? Okay. What about you, Marnie? Will you take us to why don't we talk about where we kind of go from here? So will you take us to, yes, kind of where we are. So the purpose of this exercise was to just, like we said, be really generative about a lot of ideas and tie those to the sociospatial issues, but also now start to transition, do what you were talking about, Scott, which is now how do we start to turn these into the characteristics that we most want to see if we're thinking about our facility planning in as equitable a way as possible, right? So the 3 rings that you see in front of you are the need for focusing on what are the characteristics that we need to create the portrait, the graduate portrait, and what we want to provide for our kids. The second ring are educator essentials. What do we need to provide the educators, the guides in the building to ensure that they are best, that we are providing them with what they need to best serve the needs of the students to get them to their graduate portrait. And then the third ring is that how does the system need to shift, right? To ensure that we're meeting the needs of the educator and meeting the needs of the student. And so our job now as a CRiT coalition is to think about facility planning characteristics and to take some of these ideas that we heard and turn those into 11 planning characteristics, or if we need more, we'll take more. So in terms of where we go from here, we will take the input that we've got today, we will we will start to figure out where we have commonalities, turn those into big sort of categories of issues, both across the themes, across the issues, but then also within those issues. Because what we'll be doing moving forward in our CRiT coalition work is every meeting we will be talking about 2 or 3 of these in much more detail. So that way we can eventually, at the end of those sessions, come up with what is the aspirational language that we want to use to best capture those ideas to put in this 4th ring of facility planning characteristics. So we will be sharing this work with others in the district, with the core team that we work alongside next week. And then we will come back together with you in our, thank you, Marty. In our schedule, there we go. So we will come back together with you. Obviously the summit was today. We have another meeting on the 29th of this group where we start to do that sort of turning these into the facility planning language. We will start with the first 3 issues, the tribute to white dominant narratives, the underrepresentation of BIPOC communities, and how we better reflect students and local communities, and turn those now into the aspirational positive language that we want for those planning characteristics. And then this work, like I said, will continue to live outside of this group and be presented to a core team and in future to the school board. Thank you to those of you that were here tonight to hear it firsthand. But that's kind of the trajectory of the work moving forward. And we could not do this without you. So thank you very much for your time tonight. Marnie, will you check us out?
I would love to check you out. I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other. There we go. And I just made my Zoom window as big as I could so I could see you. I love to end a conversation talking about gifts. So we just spent 3 hours together. We wrestled with things. We shared ideas. We shared our heart. We shared values. So if you could look back over the 3 hours we spent together, what's a gift you received tonight? So if you could just, I'll give you a minute to think about it. Could be a gift from another person in the room. It could be a gift from the process. It could be a gift of inspiration. And then if you just go ahead and put it in the chat and don't hit enter until everyone gets a chance to just kind of process it. And then we will have a couple of you share out if you are so inclined. So just giving you a minute. What's a gift you received tonight? I'm kind of watching your eyes, and it looks like you're still looking down at your keyboards, I'm assuming. Okay, how about everybody go ahead and hit enter and join Sage. There you go. Now read those in the chat. The idea of this, we kind of call it a chatterfall or a waterfall in the chat. The idea of this is that you're reading these, but you're also responding to them. Your body is literally responding as it reads and going, how do I feel about that? How do I feel about that? So it's this sort of whole body experience of each other. So it's hearing each other's ideas and your thoughts and your feelings in your words. It also gave you a chance to sort of process tonight and look back over it. And I just love ending in gifts, because there's always a gift, even when we do really tough things, right? So would anyone like to share the gift that they received tonight? You can just go ahead and unmute yourself.
For speaking for our small group, we had a phenomenal facilitator, Valeria. She did a wonderful job of getting us to talk and bring ideas forward. Thank you.
Beautiful. And thank you, Claire, for going first and opening the room for everyone.
On the other end, first of all, thank you, Claire. On the other end, I am glad for the gift of hope that the school district truly has the best in mind and has for other perspectives, and knowing that we have people like Claire here who work directly with the school board, being able to kind of hear those ideas firsthand.
Thank you. Anyone else like to share a gift they received tonight?
Three of us had pretty much the same, hearing from students about their experience and their thoughts about space is just so rewarding and crucial to moving forward. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you to the students for joining us tonight.
Thank you. How about at least one more? At the tip of your tongue. I'm going to share a gift. I almost cried, I think, 3 times tonight listening to you all, to see you come together 3 hours on a Thursday night to work toward a better world for our students and for all of us, and putting us all on the path that we have been so misguided up until now. Is just, it's inspiring.
Inspirational, yeah.
Yeah, and inspirational. It is an honor for me to be here with you all. I can't thank you all enough for allowing me to be here with you. So this is just an incredible gift. This gives me life. Also, I love, John, that you got to see Director Moore's cat.
Always a pleasure.
What I loved is that the cat kept kind of coming in and out. And it was playing peekaboo. It was great.
So just so you know, when he's not on camera, he has been 3 inches away, lying down and listening. So
You're actively engaging in the work.
He's doing his work.
All right. Thank you again, everyone. We will see you all again on the 29th, where we will begin to tackle this big task we have ahead of us, which is starting to look at those first 3 issues and how we can translate the work that you have all done tonight into an actionable long-range facility planning characteristic for each of those. So thank you again. Enjoy your Thursday evening and try and get out there before it starts raining again this weekend. Happy Earth Day, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy Earth Day.
Bye.
Thank